Hey, hey, future Corey here. The videos that we're releasing for the Making of the Book series were filmed over a year ago, and it's been so much fun sharing them with you. We don't very often get the opportunity to share this sort of behind the scenes look at how a book is made. I've received a lot of great questions as I've been sharing these videos, and I'd like to do a Q&A to answer some of them for you. So if you have a question that you've been wondering about, I'd love if you'd leave it for me in the comments below so that I can take some time to answer those for you. Without further ado, here's the next installment in our Making of a Book series. Hi, my name is Corey Yoder of Coriander Quilt, and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, this is the Making of the Book series. This is video number 4. So if you've missed the first 3, I suggest you go back and watch those, because then this one is going to make a whole lot more sense. I am taking you through the process of how I am making a book and the publication process and what all it takes to go from an idea to a finished book. So let's get started. Last week I showed you some of the designs in my book, and this last week has been just a whirlwind of pattern writing and choosing fabrics and making sure I was happy with what I showed you last week. And I've actually made a number of changes, and some of those I'm going to share with you today. This is going to end up being a 2-part video because I don't quite have all of my fabrics here right now. So what I'm going to show you is about the first half, show you some of the fabrics and some of the new designs and see what you think. So up first, over here on my right, is the quilt that you made using fabrics that you've been hanging on to for a while. I am going to be using Nest fabric. So this design hasn't changed much. I'm going to hold that quilt up for you again, but this is the fabric, Nest, and I chose one of Vanessa's newer fabric lines, Bloomington, that I'll be using for the border. The nice thing about many designers is if you follow them for any length of time, you're going to see that you can find fabrics currently available that match something that you might have been holding on to. So this is a newer fabric line that goes really nicely with the older line that I've been holding on to. So that's what I'm going to be using. And the background, I don't know if this is going to show on the camera or not, but it's this fun little white tonal fabric. And I really like using white on white tonals. This is from one of my fabric lines, Sugar Creek. And I really like using them because they have a little bit more body than just a white solid would. So they're very nice to piece with. So that is the fabrics for that quilt. And let me just show you, this is what the quilt is going to look like right here. So that gives you an idea of that one. And I'm just gonna kind of move down the table here going over what I have decided. So that one didn't change at all. That one stayed the same. The next one, this one didn't really change that much at all either. This is the one you made for a friend, and you end up making one for yourself at the same time. So you remember this is what the main quilt looks like. I don't think I shared the second quilt with you last week, and I think I'm just gonna let that be a surprise. So there's another quilt in this pattern. The pattern makes 2 different quilts, and I'm using Springbrook. These are the Springbrook fabrics, and I'm going to swap out some of the prints in this collection. So this is a 34-piece fat quarter bundle, and I need 34 fat quarters. And I'm gonna take out some of the fabrics that have less contrast. There's a couple that have white backgrounds that aren't gonna work as well for my quilt because they don't have as much print. So I just chose some fabrics from my stash behind me that I'm gonna be swapping out for some of those lighter prints. And I think that's gonna be a nice change. Now, when you have fat quarter bundles or any pre-cut really, it's a good idea to kind of think what background you're going to be using with those prints, because sometimes you might want to swap out just a couple of the fabrics just for contrast reasons. Well, for the background on this quilt, I'm using this little X print from my Hollyberry line, and that's going to work great as a background. I like those prints that have just a little bit of something going on. They work really nicely for backgrounds. So that's my plan for that one. This next one took a turn from last week. So last week I shared my plan for my favorite colors quilt, and I actually showed you 2 different designs. I had showed you this one. I said, oh, I did this one and I liked it, but in the end I decided to use, and then I showed you, get it here, this one in the corals and the grays. And the nice thing about the mock-ups that I have, I use Electric Quilt. You can see really easily how different fabrics are going to look. And so as I started writing the pattern for this, I looked at this design and I thought, that's just a little bit boring. It doesn't have quite the pizzazz that I want it to have. So I started playing around a little bit, and I wanted a fabric line that was going to be easy to get right now. And Cider by Basic Gray for Moda is a line that just came out pretty recently. And so I started playing around with those fabrics. And this is where it started, and through many renditions, that's the same block, it's just different fabrics. I ended up landing on, let me grab it, this one, which is a whole lot different from what I showed you last week. At least I think it looks a lot different. The fabrics really change how this quilt feels. And I have all of those in front of me here. So it's a mix of prints and grunge fabrics from Basic Gray. And I just love this sort of palette, this sort of happy fall, warm, good colors. And the grunge fabrics, if you've never worked with them, let me see which one. I'll pull up this one here. So this is a grunge, and it's not a solid, but it's not super not solid either. It just has a lot of texture on it, and they're just a lot of fun to work with. So that's what a grunge looks like. So grunge and prints for this one rather than the corals and grays. And I think that's going to turn out super pretty. And that has a grunge background too. So that is that quilt. That is Favorite Colors quilt. And then the next one I'm sharing with you is the one that's hand quilted. So this one changed a little bit too. Last week when I showed it to you, this was my design, and I said I thought I was going to use a Fig Tree Quilts fabric line, and I ended up not using a Fig Tree Quilts fabric line, and I changed the pattern just a little bit too. So it is going to have, let me see if I have a better printout. It's going to have trees and houses like so. So I decided I wanted to do two different blocks, trees and houses, rather than just all the house blocks, just to give it a little something extra. And I ended up changing the fabrics to my Cozy Up line of fabrics, which actually, as I'm filming this video, have not even been shown to quilt shops yet, but by the time you guys are seeing it, it will have been out for a number of months. So this is Cozy Up, and it's kind of a fall line of fabric. I don't know how well you'll be able to see some of these, but you'll know what they look like because you will have seen this line of fabric most likely by the time this video comes out. So it's a fall line of fabric, and that's going to be the one that I'm hand quilting. I also made the size just a little bit smaller since I know that I'm hand quilting that. I wanted to make sure that I had plenty of time to get that done in the amount of time that I have. And then the last quilt, now this one is another one that took a bit of a turn since we talked last week. The last one I want to show you for today is the quilt that you make for the new baby. And last week when I showed you the design, this is what I was thinking. And I was thinking about doing it in Sunday Stroll. And I really like this design, but when I started working on the pattern, I wasn't happy with how it might look if you wanted to do it for a baby boy. It just looks so feminine to me. So I thought I wanted to do something that works well for any new baby. And I started thinking what that could be. And I have a daughter who loves turtles. And so I thought, man, if I could do something with turtles, that would be a lot of fun, because then this might be a quilt that she could end up having. And so I started playing around with a turtle pattern, and I came up with this pattern here. And these are a Moda line of fabric by French General, which was just something that I had handy to play with, but it wasn't necessarily the fabrics that I wanted to use. So I designed this, and my daughter that loves turtles was away while I was working on it. And so when she got back home, I said, she was just away playing with some friends. She wasn't away for an extended period of time, but I was working on it in the morning, and when she got home in the afternoon, I said, Eleni, what do you think about this quilt? Can you tell what it is? Because that's always my first concern when I start working with animals. Are people even going to know what this block is? And she's like, oh yeah, it's a turtle. And so I said, do you like it? And she said, yes, I do like it. And then I said, okay, so I think this can be a quilt that you can have once we are done with the sample that we need for the quilt. And I didn't know what fabric I wanted to use for it. And so I started asking her, showing her some different things, and nothing was quite right. And I said, well, if you could have any fabric that you wanted for this quilt, what would you pick? And she said, well, if it could have greens and blues and maybe some purple. And I said, Eleni, we have that fabric. We've been hanging on to this fabric for you because you liked it, and we just never made a quilt with it. So let me show you what it is. It is these fabrics here. This is the charm pack, which is all you're going to need for this pattern. And this is an older Kate Spain line of fabric that she just really liked. I'll just hold some of these up here. And it has the blues and it has the greens. And as we get back further, you're gonna see that it has the purples, dark blues, all sorts of colors here. But this is a line, we've probably had this for a couple years, just waiting for what we wanted to make with it. She really liked this fabric. So we have a charm pack and we have a layer cake of it. It's called Horizon and it's by Kate Spain. So we are going to do a turtle quilt. Here's what it's gonna end up looking like. We're gonna do a turtle quilt for the quilt that's made for a new baby. And I just think that is going to work a lot better for that design than what I had originally thought. So those are the first, let's see, first 5 new quilts for the book. And I still have fabric that's coming to me. I was able to get a lot of it locally. We have a lot of great quilt shops where I live. So I got a lot of it locally, but I did need to order some from online. So those are still coming to me. And once I have those, I will go ahead and share with you the second set of new fabrics for the quilts. And then all of these fabrics are getting sent off to my sample makers. As I mentioned previously, I have a wonderful group of ladies that are making the quilt tops for me. And then I have another lady who will be doing all of the quilting for me, which is just a huge help. So these will be getting sent out to them, and I will be back soon to show you the rest of the fabrics. I will talk to you guys later.